For the next part of the project for financial literacy, we're going to go to the project component called retirement. Click there and you'll be on this page. So we're going to see how much money you end up with based on your budget. So the first thing you're going to do is click on Retirement Spreadsheet. And then once the spreadsheet downloads, pull it up and go ahead and save it to your math folder. So once it appears, don't worry about what it looks like. If it asks you to enable editing or enable saving or anything like that, go ahead and click Enable. And go to File, Save As, save this to your math folder. So look for your math folder, save it in there. Now you'll notice the spreadsheet looks kind of weird. It has a lot of dashes. That's because these have formulas in them. So before you do anything, I want you to just watch. So anywhere there's a dash, if you look up at the formula bar, you'll see the formula. Okay, so I'm going to explain to you what all these formulas mean. So over here under income, we're actually going to put our yearly income. This is like the spreadsheet for Charlene and Marcus. We start at year 0 and we're going to save each year. So we're going to use our monthly budget to come up with a yearly projection of how much we're going to save. So on mine, I had an income of $35,000 a year for my starting salary. So I'm going to type that into cell B2. Notice in the name box, I'm in cell B2 and hit enter. When I do, all these numbers are going to appear. If you find that some of the numbers are difficult to read, they look like they have little hashtags. We call those pound symbols. I'll show you what that might look like. It might look like this. What that means is that your column is not wide enough to see what's in the cells. So you can put your cursor up at the line that separates the columns where the letters are, and you'll get this cursor that looks like a black cross with double arrows on the side of the one side. So double click and it'll make your column just as wide as it needs to be. Okay, so now let's go through and see what this has. So it has our income. We put our income on the first cell B2 here under income. We're going to arrow down and look up at the formula bar. The formula bar has an equal, which lets you know it's a formula that Excel is calculating. And it says B2. Well, B2 is our income, $35,000. And we added to that 0.025 times B2. So 0.025 is 2.5%. So what's happening is we're multiplying 2.5% times our income, and that's going to be our raise each year. Now, this is not necessarily the raises you get every year. It's an estimate. But we're going to pretend that we're getting a 2.5% raise each year. So we take the income from the year before and add 2.5% of that income back to itself. You'll see in the next cell, we have the income from the year before in cell B3, and added to it is 2.5% of B3. And that's what each of these formulas will do, is calculate the previous year's income plus 2.5% of that income for the new income for that year. So this is our linear growth. Then we are going to be putting 10% away for retirement. That was the minimum you could put away in your spreadsheet for your monthly budget. So we may adjust this in a minute. Okay, beginning balance is going to be 0. We don't have anything in our savings for our retirement. Remember, this is the long-term savings, the savings where we're trying to save enough to be financially independent so that we don't have to work unless we want to. So we have nothing to start with in year 0. The addition to principal is the amount that we put in every year. So let's see what's happening here. Addition to principal. So the first year we put $3,500 in. And if we look up here at the formula bar, you can see we're multiplying C2, which is where it says 10% right here, times B2, which is our income. So if we arrow down in this column, we can see that every year we're multiplying 10% times the income for that year, and that's how we're figuring out how much we're putting into savings. So the amount we add to our savings or retirement each year is going to increase because our income is increasing. we're putting the same percentage in, but our income is increasing. So now let's look at the next column, column F. Okay, so here we have the new principal. So the new principal is going to be, if we look at the formula bar, the sum of D2 and E2. So it's how much we started with at the beginning of the year plus how much was added out that we added to it. So how much we started with plus how much we added to it is our new principal. And then the rate of return is the percent that the bank is going to use to calculate how much money they give you to keep your money in the bank. So the rate of return is the same thing as the interest rate. That's another way to say interest rate. The return is the actual interest. So 7.10% is the interest rate, so it's interest as a percent, and then the return is the actual interest, the amount of money that's calculated the bank gives you. So we're assuming that we're making 7.10% on our retirement, on our savings. And right now, everything's between, it really ranges, but you can assume somewhere between 5 to 8%. So the return is the amount that gets added to our new principal. So our ending balance, when we click on cell I2, our ending balance, if we look at the formula bar, is H2, that's the amount that the bank gave us, plus F2, the new principal. So basically, we added our beginning balance to how much we put in the bank. We figured out what that equals all together, and then we figured out the amount of interest the bank is going to give us based on our new principal times the rate of return. And so that's the amount the bank gives us. The amount the bank gives us plus the new principal gives us our ending balance, okay? You need to be able to understand the spreadsheet. So we're going to go back to the beginning and go through this again, so you can fast forward if you get it. So here we are in the next year. Our income is 2.5% more than the previous year. We're still putting in 10% of our money into long-term savings, our retirement, and that's going to give us this number. So 10% times this number gives us this number. And then for the following, this beginning balance comes from the ending balance from the previous year. And then the addition to principal is the 10% of the income. So here we have the beginning balance, which came from the ending balance of the previous year, and then the addition to principal is 10% of the income. So now we're going to add the beginning balance to the amount we added to the bank, and that gives us our new amount, our new principal. So the new principal is going to be the sum of the beginning balance plus the amount we added to the bank. Then the bank is going to give us 7.10% or 7.1% of that principal, the amount we have in the bank. They're going to multiply those together to give us interest, to figure out the interest. And now the interest is going to be added to the principal to give us our ending balance. Okay, and the ending balance becomes the beginning balance for the following year. Now, in my example, if I scroll down, I can see at the end of 30 years, I have $500,000. Now, we know that we will probably work longer than that. If you're at 30 years and you have well over $1 million, you're good. But let's see how long it's going to take to get to that point. So our goal is to get to $1 million. So there's something you can do with Excel that makes this really easy to work with. So what you're going to do is highlight, let's just highlight these last few rows, and you need to exactly highlight the data. Don't get any blank cells or anything. And then we're going to drag using this little, there's a little box at the bottom right there, and I'm hovering my cursor over it and I get a black plus. And I'm going to scroll a little bit so you can see what happens. So this is called autofill, and I'm going to drag this down, and I'm going to go down to 45 years, which should be about here. So there's 45 years. I'm going to make this column wider by double clicking between the I and the J on that line. Okay, at 45 years, I'm at $1.5 million, so I'm doing great at 45 years. But I can kind of see when I hit that million mark. So for me, the million mark is going to be at 39 years of working. And so then I can decide, do I want to keep working at the same rate and saving at the same rate, or do I want to retire and live on it? Is it really enough to live on? I would talk to my financial advisor. So now there's some things we can do to play around. So not only can we change the length of time that we're investing, but we can change the percentage that we invest. So for example, maybe I put 15% in. I can type 15 here, and I'm going to click that green check right there, which accepts it. And then I'm going to use that little black plus and use the autofill to go down and copy 15% all the way down. So now I'm putting more money away, 5% more, and the amount of time it takes to get $1 million is now 34 years instead of 39 years. And at 45 years, I now have almost $2.5 million instead of $1.5 million. So that's a significant difference. Okay, I'm going to hit Control Z to undo and go back and hit it twice to get back to 10%. Now, also the rate of return can change. So what if, the average rate of return is only 6%? I'm going to type 6, hit this check right here to accept it, and then I'm going to drag this down. So if we're only getting 6% instead of 7.10%, which the percentage varies from year to year depending on the economy, but let's say it averages at 6%, notice that makes a huge, huge, huge difference. So now I'm at 1.2 instead of 1.5 million at the end of 45 years. Okay, and I'm going to hit Control Z twice to get back to the 7.10%. So really, the only thing that you really have control over is this column right here, and that's the percent that you put in every year. And of course, the career you choose, how much money you make with the career you choose. But again, keep in mind, whatever you do for work, you're going to be doing every day for the rest of your life, or most days for the rest of your life before you retire. So it needs to be something you really love. So money is really important, but so is being happy. So you have to kind of balance that. So what I want you to do in the spreadsheet is to put your income, if you haven't already done that, and hit enter. Now, you may have to adjust your percentage of investment if you didn't put 10% in your budget. So let's say, for example, that you put 15% in, then you would do what I just did and change this to 15%, going all the way down. Now, let's say that you actually manually changed your number. You didn't change your percentage on your spreadsheet. So let's say, for example, you had an income of $60,000 a year and you were putting in $8,000 a year. So you would do 8,000 divided by 60,000. And that tells you that you're putting away 13% per year, 0.13, 0.3. So you could come over here, put 13.3, hit this little check, and drag that down to adjust. So basically, you need to adjust this spreadsheet so that it reflects the percentage of your income that you were putting away on your budget underneath retirement, and also have the income, your yearly income that you have in your career blog post. You need to have that right here, the lowest 10% number, yearly income, putting your percentage, okay, and then save at that point, because this is your final spreadsheet. Also make sure it goes down to 45 years using the technique that I showed you. All right, so for me, if I was putting away 13.3% for 45 years at 7.10, and the market stayed at 7.10%, that means the banks are giving 7.10%. It's not really the banks, it's really the stock market and some other things. But it's your retirement. Your retirement is giving you 7.10%. Then I would have a little over $2 million at the end of 45 years, which is great. So what I'd like you to do for your blog post is you're going to take a screenshot of this. Now, to get all of this into a screenshot, a couple of things. First, you can click here on this up arrow so that your ribbon goes away, and that will show you more. Okay, and then the other thing you can do, oops, not that, you're going to go to view, and then you can zoom out. So you can click on zoom, and then tell it like 75%. Okay, so again, I just went to view, I went to zoom, and I chose 75%. Now I can see everything. So again, I'm going to have to double click here to make that wide enough, column I wide enough to see. So now I'm going to do a screenshot with my snipping tool, take a screenshot of, now that you took a snapshot of your table and you saved it to your desktop to upload into your blog post, we're going to create a graph of this data. And what we want to do is compare your income and the growth of your income to your ending balance. So what you're going to do is highlight income. So just highlight the data, the word income, all the way down to cell B47. Don't get any blank cells when you highlight. Now, to highlight this last column at the same time, you hold down Control on your keyboard while you're highlighting. And once you're done highlighting, you let go of your mouse first, and then you let go of Control. So now you have the income and the ending balance. So we have our income and our retirement, so we can compare them in a graph. So we're going to insert a graph. They call these charts in Excel. So we're going to choose a line chart. Just choose the first one. And we want it to be on a separate page. So once the chart tools appear, let's choose Move Chart. And we're going to put this on a new sheet and call it Retirement versus Income. And click OK. So you'll see at the bottom we now have two tabs. We have the Table tab and the Retirement versus Income tab. So these are two different pages. Now I want to change this just slightly. So we're going to come up, so we're under Design right now, under Chart Tools. So here's Chart Tools, here's Design. We want to go to Quick Layout, and we're going to change this so that we have a chart title and we have an X and Y axis title. So let's come, and also a legend. So let's come down and choose this layout. Chart title, it'll have X and Y axis title, and it'll also have our legend. So click there. For the chart title, double click there to edit it, and we're going to call this Retirement versus Income Growth over time. So our X-axis down here at the bottom, we're going to double click there, highlight the text, and what do you think that is? It's the years, right? And then over here on the Y-axis, double click. I'm going to backspace over the text, and what would we call that? Dollars. Okay. So now that we have our graph, we can compare the growth, and you'll notice that the growth of our retirement, it starts out less than the growth of our income, but when we hit around 6.5 years, that's when our income and our retirement are about the same, and then after that point, our retirement grows faster and faster and faster and faster over time in comparison with our income. So the way that our retirement grows is much more like exponential growth versus the way our income grows, which is much more like linear growth. Now, in real life, neither of these grow that perfectly, but this, in the big picture, this is what happens with our retirement or our long-term savings if we don't touch it compared to the growth of our income. So you can see very clearly that income grows much like linear growth, well, like a line, and our retirement grows like exponential growth, like we saw in our linear versus exponential growth activity. So what you're going to do now is use your snipping tool and take a snippet of your graph, save it to your desktop, or your, save it to your desktop. And that's just a temporary spot to save it. So I'm going to call this graph. And then you're going to bring both of these into your blog post and write a paragraph about what you've learned when you compare linear to exponential growth and how that applies to comparing retirement to your income and the growth of both of those over time. And if you look back at your instructions, It tells you in a blog post, insert the screenshot picture files of your spreadsheet table and your chart. Include a paragraph explaining the difference between the growth of your salary versus the growth of your retirement, and relate that to linear growth and exponential growth. So also relate exponential growth to compound interest. And remember your tags, FLP, retire, and your class tag.